this didn't have to happen, because the Democrat president is a Republican. They're cutting social programs unnecessarily. They never had to even be in debt negotiations. The Democrats could have lifted the debt ceiling last year before the Republicans took over Congress.
Yeah.
People did talk about it. They didn't want to do it. Dick Durbin, emphasis, Dick Durbin, said he's a dick. I don't know if people caught that. He really is. Dick Durbin said, when asked, well, why don't you raise the debt ceiling with the last reconciliation package? He goes, we've got a lot to do. There's not enough time. First of all, fuck you. You don't work like a 40-hour week like mostly everybody else, or 50-hour weeks like some people. You maybe work a few hours a week, right? So don't tell me there's no time. And this is the most important thing, because if the Democrats raised, just so people understand, Democrats could have raised the debt ceiling by $50 trillion. They could have just said, listen, anything up to this amount, we're good, which would have put us fine for the next, like, who knows, 20, 30 years. I don't know. They could have done that. They had the legal right to do it. They had the majority. They could have done it through reconciliation, wouldn't have needed one vote from a Republican. Biden didn't push for that. He never talked about it. There was no national address on it, even though they know, well, our priorities are going to be affected when Republicans take over in the midterms, because usually the opposition party wins the midterms. They knew this could happen. They did nothing about it. So they punted. And the reason they did nothing is because they didn't think it would play well in the midterms. They were afraid of losing power, losing seats, and pissing off their donors. So this whole thing didn't have to happen. I feel like right now we're living under Ronald Reagan, because massive military budgets, austerity for the working class and those living in poverty. And that's why this animates me. And these are the Democrats. These are supposed to be the good guys. This right here is an example of why I hate the Democratic Party now. A party that I used to love, that I worked for, I volunteered for years, most of my adult life. I hate them because they shit on working class people. They shit on poor people. They should be raising SNAP, not cutting it. SNAP, what is it, like $5 and change a day? It's a little under $6. I live in New York. You can't eat on that.
I've had SNAP in California before in the last 10 years, maybe. Yeah, in the last 10 years. And they act like you running off gallivanting and down the street. Like, it's so ridiculous. But the work requirement that's already in place, it's already one in place. That was one of the reasons why I had to stop getting it. Because I had the situation where we qualified for it, even though one of us was working, but we couldn't afford child care. So one of the parents had to stay home and watch the kid. So it's like, well, I can't go. I don't have anyone to watch my child. I can't go to this work requirement. What am I going to do?
But this was something they did in the 80s. And then, they made it worse. Clinton did this in the 90s.
Bill Clinton, yes.
Bill Clinton did it. It was another piece of shit.
Yeah. 70% of the recipients at the time, Professor, were children when they changed this.
Yes.
And they were put up against the wall just like this, and they played it in the media just like this. Oh, we had to. No, you don't. And it's so funny how the Democrats are so weak. When they're in power, the Republicans win. When they have all the levers of, all the, executive branch, they have the Senate, they have the House, they still lose. Republicans has one of the three. You have two of the three. How are you always on the losing end of the Democratic Party? Go ahead.
Oh, it's like the end of Scooby-Doo. And you pull the mask off, and the Democrats.
Yes.
Or Joe Biden's really, it was you all along, Joe Biden. Yes. We thought you were a Republican.
Like he was going to be.
So why, there's this, when you start hearing liberals, look at some of the responses on these tweets. And I don't know if I'm dealing with a MAGA conservative or libertarian or a liberal. That's how bad it is these days. It could be either of them. Most likely it's a libertarian or Democrat saying things like, well, why shouldn't people work? Why shouldn't they pay their student loans back? They're talking the same way, Republicans and Democrats. So we don't have a Democratic Party anymore. We have a Republican Party, and then we have the pro-choice Republican Party, who's not really that pro-choice either. And they're definitely not for reproductive justice. They don't care if poor women can't get abortions. They don't give a shit. They don't. Your government doesn't care about you. You know, it's like
these are just voting motivators. That's all. These terms. Just like they left. That's the reason why they left the debt ceiling unresolved, because they needed a fight. They needed to have this fight. But can you see your tweet where you can read it, or no? I can read it if you can't see it. So let's read this thread, and then we'll go to a couple of other ones that you address here. But I'll let you read it yourself.
See, this is my thread. It caused a lot of controversy. CJ from RBN is my favorite podcaster. No, that's not the tweet, but it should be. The Democratic president just approved a budget deal that forces people in poverty into more onerous work requirements just to be able to eat. Do not vote for Democrats. They don't vote for you. And then you got to see some of these things. Oh, you can roll it up. You can see one of the blue MAGA.
Wait, this what you mean?
No, I'm just saying there were some responses.
Oh, you want to go to the... Okay, gotcha. Here we go.
What did Brandon do this time?
And then you explain.
So that was okay, but...
But you're saying you had some backlash? Are you saying that?
Oh my God.
You had a little bit of backlash?
Here's one I had. I'm looking at it. Someone goes, "You're such a maggot Republican, Zenkus. What a fascist and a fraud you are." So what they're doing is they're saying, if you criticize Biden, you're a Republican. Well, I'm criticizing Biden because he's not helping poor people and he's hurting them. No, that's Republican. This is actually a good deal, says nobody who's making under $40,000 a year. You know, people are like, oh, it's a good deal. He did well. And you know what? The Republicans are upset. So we must have won. We didn't have to have this fight. He could have gone the 14th Amendment route, which says we have to pay our debts. He didn't do that. He could have minted the coin, could have minted a $5 trillion coin, paid our bills. He could have done anything. He didn't want to. And the other thing that pisses me off about it, now that you got me going, he promised he wouldn't negotiate.
Yeah.
And I actually said to myself when I heard that, I was like, oh, wow, maybe he does something good. Maybe. No, he was lying. He's a pathological liar. In the words of Bernie, but instead of Trump, we'll say it about Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a pathological liar. Right?
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'm all right. When I wear my glasses down.
Let's go to another, and I got some video. I know these videos are gonna trigger you from when you hear what they say. If you haven't already, like for example, Hakeem Jeffries praising this.
Hate him.
Yes, like Jim Clyburn is praising this. Rokana. So I got 3 videos to show you to get your reaction, but I do want to go to another one of your tweets. Now, you said that's one of your viral ones, but you had another one. You had another tweet that got a lot of response, and it included it didn't only talk about the SNAP benefits, but it included it in it. So if you want to read this one, we can read this one and go to the next one.
First, Joe Biden threw rail workers under the bus. Then he threw Medicaid and SNAP recipients under the bus. And now he just threw SNAP recipients under the bus for a second time. There's a reason for that 35% approval rating. Democrats, your party needs a different nominee.
I wonder, he's already so low. What is he thinking with this? I don't get it. Go ahead.
I don't know that he's not cognitively well. This isn't him anyway. Who knows who's making these decisions? Who's his chief of staff again?
Zealot, or something like that.
One guy left. Yeah. There's a new one there.
Yeah.
So who knows who's making the decisions? But listen, liberals are making excuses for the fact that Democrats broke the rail strike, sided with the owners of the railway over labor, forced labor to accept a contract that they had already rejected. And then a month after that, that's when Biden ended the pandemic emergency measures, meaning millions of people were kicked off of Medicaid and enhanced SNAP benefits were cut. And then this blow. This is not a victory. Could it have been worse, this budget deal with the Republicans, with the debt ceiling? Absolutely, it could have been worse, but that doesn't mean this is okay. And by the way, people, we should be increasing SNAP. I'm a social worker. One of our, this is like a main tenet of my field, which is like aligning ourselves with the poor. So where are the other social workers? Stand up. This is unacceptable. We should be raising Social Security reimbursement. We should be raising Medicaid, raising Medicare, adding more funds to SNAP, giving people more money to buy food. This should be happening in the worst economy since the Great Recession of 2008. They're doing the opposite, and the Democrat is doing it, and he didn't have to.
Yeah.
And what's this 1% cap on non-defense spending? That's not good. What if everything keeps going up? That's actually a cut.
Right. That's what I was just about to get to, and I say this every time they use this language. Freeze and these other soft language is so they don't use the word cut. They say freeze spending. That's the same thing as cut if it goes up. Like I'm gonna freeze your paycheck at $10, but prices keeps going up. Isn't that a pay? That's a cut because my pay is not keeping up with the cost of items. So that's a cut. But this is Case Study QB. We'll go through a couple of some of his media exhibits here. This is the first one. It's a snapshot from Morning Joe to show what's in this debt ceiling. Now, of course, a lot of corporate media, they're not even talk about some of the most damaging things that's in this, like the student loan pause. I don't know if it's in this one, but a lot of the segments, they don't even include that. But let's read what Morning Joe says in it. Raises debt ceiling for 2 years. Why are they only doing it for 2 years? So they have another fight in 2 years. You see?
Of course.
1% cap on non-defense spending increases for 2025 fiscal year.
Why? Why not defense?
Exactly.
Why does defense get carved out? It should be the opposite. It should be, if you're going to put a cap on spending, put it on non-essential spending, and essential spending should be considered SNAP. People got to eat.
It's ridiculous that.
Can
anyway,
we talk about?
I don't want to go. Go ahead.
Can I just the work requirements? So people have to understand what this means. Mm-hmm. The work requirement is you have to work 20 hours, and now they extended it for people up to the age of 55. You have to work 20 hours a week. So the people that you're working for, they're now with the government. They don't have to pay you out of their own pocket a full salary, right? So they're not going to pay you good because you're a SNAP beneficiary on a work program. So that's, and where you're working, there's not a ton of small businesses around. You're probably going to end up at Target or Walmart. So it's like a subsidy to them. And the other piece is now you have to prove it. So what people who have never been on social services don't understand, there's a whole lot of red tape and paperwork, and it's frustrating. It used to literally all be in paper. Now it's online. What if you don't have steady internet access? What if you're like entering all the information and you put a wrong number? Boom, you don't get your food. And what if the boss that you're working for, the place you're working for, doesn't put your time in on time? Well, you're not eligible for SNAP anymore. What if they make a mistake on their part? There's a computer error or glitch. When you have all these hoops. So what, I made a comment on one of my tweets. Biden is making people in poverty dance for their supper. So in the 1930s, I was reading that during the Depression, dance marathons became very popular but they were very exploitative because poor people, they would dance for days and days and they would get fed while they danced. And the club owner who put it together would make a lot of money. People would pay to see it. And they would get fed while they were doing it. And they never won. The professional dancers would win. But it became a thing. And apparently there's a movie about it from the 60s. Somebody pointed out on my thread called They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Starring Jane Fonda, I think. I've never seen it. So, but it's about these dance marathons. And basically, it's like the Hunger Games. Hunger Games wasn't a new idea. They just did it really cool. Well, this is what you're doing. You're making somebody work a useless job for 20 hours a week just to eat. Just to eat. What kind of sick world is this? Oh, they should. And then what if you have a disability, then you won't have to do the requirement, but then you have to prove your disability. And that's paperwork. You have to go to a doctor and a doctor has to sign off on it. That takes time. Meanwhile, you're hungry. Like, what is going on? It's so unnecessary. Democrats are doing this austerity and it's horrendous. That's why I'm riled up.
Yeah, and that's why you say you are pissed off at the Democratic Party. But let me read a couple more from this list here. I'll start at the bottom. New rules to make it easier to gain permit approval for energy projects. So this is basically Joe Manchin's project. I think it's called Mountain Valley Pipeline. All the permits will be approved now to finish it. It's been stalled because protests and different things. Let's put that through. Rescind some new funding to the IRS from the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm fine with that if there's less IRS agents. Expanded work requirement for certain adults on food stamps. Now you're saying they're making the age an older age. It was like at a lower age, and now they're extending it to a higher age. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what they're doing. It just means more hoops to go through. So here's what happens. People that can't prove it give up. A lot of people don't access things because it's not easy. This is what people don't understand about means testing. When you make it harder and harder for people, a lot of them give up. They're like, why bother?
Right. It was me. That's me. And it's an exact that. It's like, man, I have to get this and that. Birth certificate. I got to go there. You go to the place of the birth certificate. You got to get one with a seal and all these other requirements. And it's like, man, I got to pay that and pay this and take the bus over here. It's like, what the hell is going on here? And and the whole thing is I need assistance. So now I need assistance so that I can go fill out the paperwork to get assistance. You get what I'm saying? And they know this is why it's and they know that. They know, yes, there's gonna be people who still qualify, but they know, hey, put up just enough red tape where there's gonna be some people that are just so frustrated. And there we go. Capitalism wants to save money any way they can, whether it's them taking it from you or you giving up in frustration. Either way, it's saving money to them.
And there's a message here. They could easily not cut food stamps or not increase the work requirements. They could easily fund it more. They don't want to. Not just because it might cost more for them. They don't want to because they don't want to set a precedent. There's a reason the Democrats have done none of the things Biden promised. There's a reason that child tax credit expired in under a year. They don't want us to get used to the idea that government can work for us. They want us to always think this is the best you'll get. And this is the classic abusive relationship syndrome where the victim, say it's a man and a woman and he's hitting her. Sorry for the gender binary, but it's an easy example. And, but he'll tell her, listen, you don't know how good you have it here. No one's going to love you. No one's going to want to be with you. All of that shit that they tell their victims. So the victims think this is the best I can do. And trust me, that slow Stockholm syndrome brainwashing is the cornerstone of those abusive relationships. And that's exactly what's happening to us. And the liberals are like, well, he did his best. What else did you want him to do? That's what we're hearing. You know, he didn't hit me on Tuesday. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. Well, he didn't hit me yesterday. He's trying really hard. Well, what could Biden have done? Exercise the 14th Amendment, grow a set, mint the fucking coin, tell the Republicans to F off because they're batshit crazy. These hardline Republican Freedom Caucus, they're out of their minds.
Like, but they're mad. They think this didn't go far enough. They're mad.
Course.
They're pissed at it.
They're idiots. And like, you know, that's why you don't negotiate with them. You just say, no,
yeah.
I'm not going to. You're an economic terrorist. I'm not negotiating with terrorists. Because the Republicans are willing to blow it all up. So, but the Democrats never use their
They're never
power.
willing to. And Ro Khanna has said as such on camera, like last week or 2 weeks ago. I recently saw him say that.
But he's in there.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know, and AOC, God, these people, the squad. I don't even know why people call it the squad. They're not a squad. They never use their votes as a block. They don't exist as a squad. They're the celebrities. So the celebrities in the Democratic Party, they're not saying a word. They think Biden's great. You know, like he didn't do. It could have been worse. And I agree. This deal could have been worse. But
let's listen to Jim. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that doesn't mean it's good. It's not like we don't have money. Just gave Zelensky $130 billion.
Exactly. And I think they're getting ready to send another package, like right when this is how we need to cut back, everybody. Zelensky, here's some extra.
Well, because that's defense spending. Why did they raise the defense budget? Remember, the defense budget went up after we left Afghanistan, and I thought, we're not in Afghanistan anymore. Shouldn't we be cutting the defense budget? If you do a little research, I just want to say this quickly. In the 1980s, I guess it was 90s. I'm sorry. Soviet Union fell in 1991, right? So then you had your Russian Federation and some states became independent. So we didn't have the quote unquote Cold War anymore. So people talked about, you can look this up. It's pretty interesting. They talked about something called a peace dividend. Is it time now to cut the military budget now that we don't have our enemy, Russia, anymore? Can we cut the military budget and give a peace dividend so there's more money for social programs, which didn't happen? So, because Clinton did austerity. But the point is, I was wondering that after we left Afghanistan. Well, can't we cut our military budget now? We're not, the war's over. They knew this war was coming. That's why they kept raising it. They're never going to lower it. Sorry.
We're being ran by a bunch of psychos.
And I mean,
that's a loose expression.
A psycho.
Here is Jim Clyburn. I just now get this, Anthony. This is Jim Clyburn asking, how are you selling this package to progressives? This is his sales pitch that we're listening. Shout out to Case Study QB. He curated this clip. It's less than 2 minutes. We'll listen, then come and react on the other side.
Let's talk about your own membership for just a moment and some progressives who are worried about this deal that the president has struck with Speaker McCarthy, that it gives away too much. They don't like the work requirements for SNAP and other federal assistance programs. What is your message to them with about 12 hours to go before that vote today?
Well, let's just take, for example, you mentioned the work requirement. The work requirement has been there since the early 90s. It goes up to 40, I think it's 49 now. What the president did here was to allow that to go up to 54. But the trade-off there was to expand the amount of people or categories of people who could come under this. People who are coming out of foster homes, trying to get settled. We aren't forcing them to go out and meet this requirement. They are exempted. Veterans, more than 100,000 additional veterans are being brought into this. They are being exempted, and people who are homeless. Now, those people that we are trying to bring in, they're not covered under the current work requirement. Though they're being raised it to 54, we are covering more people in it. So I think that's a pretty good trade-off. So yes, if you take the soundbite going from 49 to 54, and don't deal with the other things, then I can understand the concern. But I talked to a lot of people. Lauren Underwood is someone I consulted with very closely on this. Gwen Moore, who's not just one experience in working with us as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, but she's had real life experiences. And she but she sent me a text the other day saying, the more I read about this, the more I study it, the better I feel about it. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm doing here when I support it.
It was hard, but that was pure. That was terrible.
Isn't he the biggest recipient of farmer funds?
Yes,
in the Congress? Yeah, yes, Jim Clyburn. He's the reason Biden's president, right? He told everybody to vote for him. Listen, this is just, again, the conversation right now should be around how much are we going to raise SNAP because food is so damn expensive. That should be the only conversation we have about SNAP.
Let's talk about your own membership for just a moment.
How can we expand it? That should be the conversation. We're told we can't ask that. We have to be happy with the crumbs we're getting. Oh, and now it's even harder to get the crumbs. But the question really needs to be, why are we not expanding SNAP? It should be expanded. Military budget's going up. SNAP should go up. Food is more expensive than ever.
Yes, and we're going to come back to these tweets in just a second, but let's listen a little bit to what Hakeem Jeffrey says when he went on this business channel, I think CNBC.
For joining us at this important moment on Bloomberg. Are you a yes vote on this bill?
As I've indicated, I strongly support both the president, the administration, and the resolution that has been reached in terms of preventing a default that would be catastrophic, would crash the economy, would hurt millions of Americans. I applaud.
You see how they always have to kind of frame it? Mm-hmm. They have to go, this bowl of shit I'm giving you is way worse than all of this. They have to keep inserting that to kind of trick your brain to think that this bowl of shit is good. Come on, this bowl of shit. Or you can have this, this, and this. It's like, how come you are always telling me how worse it could have been? Because you are weak at fighting for more. You're saying they wanted us to do this, but we got this. They wanted us to cut $100 billion, but we only got them to cut $30 billion
in 2014.
Why? Yeah, why is any cut a compromise to you? That's what I don't understand. Go ahead.
In 2014, Barack Obama signed into law $8.7 billion in cuts to the SNAP program, almost $9 billion in cuts in 2014. The Republicans wanted to cut it by $40 billion. I mean, first of all, does anybody understand the word negotiation? They're starting at 40. Democrats, instead of being at zero and saying, okay, we'll cut less than 40, should say, oh, no. We're raising SNAP. We're raising it by $20 billion. We need to. We should be expanding eligibility for SNAP. Really, because we should be raising the amount of money people get a day, at least double what they're giving now, and then expand who can participate in it because food's too expensive. I just read that ketchup is up like 30% from last year, some insane thing. And like companies are just, they're like all excited. They can just keep raising prices because people are just it's inflation. So SNAP should be, the conversation should be, how much are we expanding it by? Bloomberg is an oligarch as well, says Gamer for Life.
Why wouldn't you come in with that negotiating position?
Because they don't like.
Go ahead.
No, they don't like. Oh, I thought you were just being.
Yeah, but you can answer the question. I'm curious to see what you were going to say.
Oh, because they hate the working class. Both parties hate the working class. Don't care about them. That's
all of this wage gain that we just recently have, they're literally taking it away with inflation. And it's like, that's what it feels like. people don't understand. You know how we examine history now? We can look back and say, look at the economy. Look at this. Look, this is what's going on. This is how it was really going. People don't have that ability to do that to the economy that they're living in. Because it's easily that you can extrapolate that what's happening with our Congress is that they're trying to force wages down with these sort of austerity measures. They're trying to make us work longer hours for less money and have everything cost more and have, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 families living in one home, 17 people in the house. That's where we're going to go, and we're not going to own anything. But let me let him play a little more of what he says, and I want to get your comment on what he says, because this is progress, right, Professor? This is what MLK wanted. We just have a black face that's saying he's okay with austerity. That's progress to them. Let's listen.
President Biden finding a resolution that will prevent this dangerous default from happening, notwithstanding the fact that he was dealing with some very unreasonable, extreme MAGA Republicans on the other side of the aisle. Support the Biden administration's resolution in that it will extend the debt ceiling for an additional 2 years and avoid the country being in this kind of hostage-taking situation for the rest of this Congress. That's a good thing. The other important resolution that was brought about as a result of President Biden's leadership is that some very important Democratic priorities were protected. Social Security protected.
You see how they're spinning? They're spinning. Your win is they didn't take this away. That's a win. That's the spin of this bill, is that it could have been way worse, and you should go ahead and accept what you got. Like, I don't understand, how is that a good negotiating position to have if, and this is where we have to suspend reality, if your whole position is to go in and do more for the American people, if your only position is to stop them from doing crazy stuff, why is that your position when you have the executive branch and the Senate? Why is your position they want cuts and we have to negotiate at least a minimal amount of cuts? Why aren't you negotiating a minimal amount of raising, to your point that you mentioned earlier, Professor? All right.
Yeah, no, I was just muted because I have my windows open and it's lawnmower season. So,
oh, right on. No worries.
Good for them. I say, let the grass grow. Let it grow wild. Again, it comes to the negotiating position where Republicans start all the way over here. It's hard on the screen to show, right? All the way on this crazy side. And Democrats start where we are now, knowing that they're going to have to go a little bit or more than a little bit to the Republican side, and then they call that a win. And my argument is we should not be talking about austerity. We should be talking about austerity for the military. We should be talking about austerity for defense contractors. We should be talking about austerity for bankers. We should not be talking about austerity for the working poor and the working class of this country, who's the reason this country exists, right? Because those people I mentioned, military-industrial complex, banking complex, all of those people, Big Pharma, they didn't build this country. They are not responsible for any progress we have made. So what the Democrats do is they start at zero and they go to the Republicans' side. And if they don't go too much over there, they go, look, we won. The question that we need to have is, why are we not starting over here? Why are we not starting with doubling SNAP expenditures? We could afford it. And so this is the problem, going back to our original discussion in the beginning about Blue MAGA and why it's so upsetting. When they call us Republicans for criticizing Biden, when they do that, what they're doing is silencing any leftist critique. We need to come out and say it. By the way, Nobody fought for us for a $15 wage. Bernie had some good rhetoric, but he didn't fight. He could have blew up that reconciliation bill and said, I'm not voting for it until you put the wage back in. He didn't. Biden folded. He didn't even want the wage. Right? So Democrats didn't give us the wage. We shouldn't say, please give us a 15, because they're going to compromise and be like, well, maybe we'll give you $11 or 12. No. That conversation's over. Our tactic needs to be, we need a $25 wage. We're not talking 15 anymore. You had your chance with 15. We want $25 wage. We want double SNAP benefits. And my hope is somebody will run on that platform. Right now, I don't see that happening.
Not really.
I'm not hearing, I saw that you had Marianne Williamson on. I will say this in her favor. Sometimes she says things that I agree with, and I'm like, good. And then I'm always like, good. And so what else? And then there's nothing else. You need somebody to come out and say, double SNAP. We're going to have a minimum wage of $30. Really, it should be 25. So make it 30. Fight there. Start your fight there. Democrats never do that. That's why the Democratic Party is not going to fight for the working class ever. If they didn't do it during the pandemic, they're not doing it now. They're not doing it ever. So we need that demands. And maybe there isn't a political party that'll do it. So maybe we just need to get in the street, nonviolent civil disobedience and protest, and just say, I remember when we occupied Wall Street, one of my favorite signs, and I saw a bunch of them, like organically, people came up with the same idea. This was 12 years ago, right? Occupy Wall Street, 11 and a half. Where's my bailout? So simple. Where's our bailout? You're increasing the military budget. Where's our budget increase? Where is it? And where are the politicians arguing for it? I don't want to hear Ayanna Pressley and AOC and Jamal Bowman and Ro Khanna tell us it could have been worse. This isn't so bad. I want them to explain, why are you not fighting for more as opposed to being happy with less? I don't know.
It's a capitulation. It's a capitulation for self-preservation. But let's listen to this. Let me see if it has her actual title here. Let's get her actual title. Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Oh, this is who this is. Okay. So let's listen how she talks about this bill and the student loan part of this bill. Listen to the phrasing that she's trying to spin here.
Yeah, thank you. Because I want to be clear, because as someone who owed a lot of money once upon a time in her life, people need certainty here. There are the court cases, which this bill does not deal with. So that continues to be where it is. Supreme Court will opine on the president's action to forgive $10,000 in student debt and $20,000 for those with Pell Grants. But in this bill, even though House Republicans' bill sought to do away with that, we saved it in this bill. So there's
They sought to do away with what?
Student loan.
Right. No, but she's trying to say they sought to do away with him taking it to court. Is that where you're trying to spin? Like they wanted him to remove the court case, but we saved that. You see, this is the same thing Hakeem Jeffries are doing, where they're telling you they saved something, they did something by simply just not taking it away. You get what I'm saying? So that's what she's trying to say here, and she furthermore explains the point. Let me back it up for context, and then she'll let her fully make the statement.
Even though House Republicans' bill sought to do away with that, we saved it in this bill. So there's nothing on that in this bill. We also protected the income-driven repayment.
So you see how she said there's nothing in that on this bill, meaning there's nothing in on the case in this bill. Like, how would that even be in the case? How would that? So she's literally making up a thing that's not a thing. Like, this is literally not a thing which she's making up here. And she goes on with this sort of logic.
There's nothing on that in this bill. We also protected the income-driven repayment rule, which If anyone has had student loans knows it did not work as intended. And this rule is intended to really tie payments to true income. Like it matters to
Again, another feature that she simply, we didn't let them take it away. This is a plus. That's what she's saying.
people whether they pay $50 or $500 a month. The big balance matters. But when I was a young person starting out this town, uh, if you asked me to pay 200, then I probably ate ramen noodles. If it was 50, maybe I could go out a little. So that balance this is an important rule to make sure people have a little breathing room every month, and that was protected in this law. The one thing is this bill does end the payment pause, but very close to the time frame we were going to end it as an administration when it comes to repayment.
That's how they're spinning it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. By the way, it ends the payment pause. Oh, sorry, it ends the payment pause real quickly. It's like, you know how at the end of those radio commercials is always the person that talks real fast. We ended the payment pause. That's what we ended the payment pause. But it's close to when we're going to end it too. But what she's failing to say, if you ended it on your own, you could restart it. This bill eliminates that. Go ahead.
Well, what she said was it's pretty close to the ending of the payment pause, which the administration, was going to do anyway, which means not only are they ending the payments, they're doing it sooner than Biden had originally said he was going to, which is going to hurt people sooner. Why are we ending the payment pause? Because the pandemic emergency is over. Remember, COVID was the most important thing when Donald Trump was president. Mm-hmm. They had Biden saying X number of deaths. This president should be out. He shouldn't be in power. Biden had more COVID deaths. But here's the thing. Why did COVID pandemic relief emergency measures end? Because the emergency measures weren't put in place just because a virus was spreading. They were put in place because of the economic fallout. We are still dealing with the economic fallout, so the emergency measures should still be in place. And by the way, you can forgive all the student loans. It doesn't cost any money to do it. They're not using taxpayer money to do that. The government just has to cancel the loan. You don't have to pay us back. We're okay. It's crazy. More austerity, and the thing is, more austerity, and we're supposed to be happy about it. Like, thank you. Thank you for not pushing me down a full flight of stairs, abuser, and only hitting me over the head with the rolling pin. Thank you. It was very nice of you. That's where we're at.
Yes. It's just shameful. This is probably my third or fourth segment on the same debt ceiling as more reaction comes in. So I'll probably do more updates once it's officially signed. Is it today? Has it been signed? Has it been reported to sign today? They're probably waiting for it to be late in the evening, so people don't get too mad. That's like what they're doing here.
Remember when January 6th, well, they're still doing it, but there were trials for these people. And one of the things I remember, I think I brought it up on another podcast I was on with you guys. I remember one of the guys was arrested for stealing from the Capitol building. And one of the things he stole was like a couple of bottles of scotch. And I remember thinking, why is there hard liquor in the Capitol building? And you want to know why? Because they do these late night votes. They're all drunk, first of all. They're all drunk off their ass. It's for them, it's like they don't care. And so they're going to do the bad thing, like you said, late at night under cover of darkness. Right now, I don't know if but it got out of committee in the House. It got out of the committee today in the House. And I don't know if anything else has happened from it.
Yeah. I'm sure they're gonna try to pass this in the night, like, when people are asleep, 3 a.m. Eastern or something like that. They'll come in and do it, or something late. It's it's so disgusting because all of this back and forth of supposedly taking this long up into the deadline, that's all just to convince people. That's all to play out so that people don't get out in the streets when they see what actually is going to happen. Because imagine if they just went and an hour later they said, "Here's all the cuts, everybody, let's do this." People be like, "What? What does this look like?" But if it looks like we're fighting and back and forth and all this stuff and this and that, it makes you think, "Oh well, they tried and this is what they got," when all along it's the same donors. The same donors want the same stuff cut. The same people who are contributing to these campaigns and businesses want the same thing.
And they're all hanging out together. And like you were talking before about that 1% freeze. Like when you freeze something, and why? Oh, so they do this because the media helps. The news media helps them along by not saying it's a cut. So if you're frozen, but everything keeps going up, imagine if you're sitting in a pool and the water is up to your waist and you don't move, you're frozen. Will your head be above water if the water keeps rising? In other words, freezing is bad. It's a cut because inflation keeps going up. Costs keep going up. So they're going to freeze discretionary spending. They're not going to call it a cut. My point is the media, as we were talking about, assists them in not telling the truth. And people are really going to be, and the people that are most hurt by this are the most tired. They're the ones who are working. I remember reading a story a few years ago. A woman named Maria Fernandez was 32 years old. I think she may have been from New Jersey. And she died in her old SUV. She worked like 3 jobs. And she would barely sleep. And she would drive from job to job to job. And if she had like an hour to sleep in between shifts at different jobs, she would sleep in her SUV. And it wasn't a new one. It was like an old fallen apart thing. So she didn't run out of gas. She brought a gas can with her because she couldn't afford to go to take the time to go to the gas station. She couldn't be late. She'd get fired. And one day she fell asleep and the windows weren't open and she asphyxiated. There's a woman in the richest country in the world having to work 3 jobs to survive at the age of 32, dead because we can't be bothered to pay people a living wage. We can't be bothered to raise SNAP benefits. We can't be bothered to use any of the riches that we have in our country to make people's lives better. She should be alive. And so should all the casualties of capitalism be alive. Imagine that world where people weren't so desperate that they took fentanyl. You know, this society is sick. It needs an intervention. People like you and I are standing up. RBN does it on the daily and says, this isn't okay, guys. We got to talk about this. And all we get from the Democrats is, la, 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 la. I don't hear you. You're a MAGA. This isn't a game, folks. People are going to die because of this. People will kill themselves, as they have been doing, because their lives are so desperate. That's the toll of what we're talking about when Democrats agree with Republicans. Just a little austerity means just a little more suicide, just a little more drug addiction, just a little more crime. You know what else goes up when people's lives become desperate? Domestic violence and child abuse. Just a little more. Could have been worse. I'm sick of hearing that.
Yeah. I want to thank you for coming on. I know you got to get going here, but I do want to thank you for coming on. I do want to take you up if you're free next week. We'll talk and get the details. But people like having you on our network, so we'll bring you back on next week if you're still available.
I would like to.
And yeah, and I'm sure we'll revisit this issue and see what happened, if it's passed and who voted against it with progressives. Like, the fact that you're waffling on whether you're voting for this or not, like it should have been a quick, no, I'm not voting for this. No, I'm not. Of course not. I'm not voting for this. It
Well,
should
they
be
threw their
like
power
that.
away. They already threw
Yeah.
their power away, but they should. Listen, got to respect the Freedom Caucus. I hate everything they stand for. They're idiots and hypocrites, but at least they stand behind what they say.
Right.
They're willing to just, like I just said before about that woman, Maria Hernandez, we get so caught up in these arguments. We just don't think of that human element. Real people's lives are going to be impacted by this in very significant ways. This isn't just a little deal. And the fact that we're not raising SNAP and raising the minimum wage, why are we not talking about those things? So I'm happy to come back, and who knows what'll be going on in the world next week.
Yeah, that's what I have no idea. I'm sure we'll probably touch on this story again, just a matter of just checking on it again. But I do want to thank you. Anything you want to shout out before you go? Anything you're working on? Anything you want to recommend people read or look at, or anything you've seen lately?
Yeah,
if not, yeah, go ahead.
No, I will. Somebody brought this up. I wish I could remember the account, because I quoted the movie. I referred to the movie They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, which is from 1969, starring a young Jane Fonda. And it's about the dance marathons during the Depression and how depraved it was, right? And so I got to thinking about old movies. Now you say someone says an old movie, they think 2005. No, I mean like old movies from the 70s, 50s, 40s. And you know what I think? There was a time when there were films that were being made on the regular, which showed the truth about capitalism. Last year, I rewatched Grapes of Wrath from 1939, which was all about the Dust Bowl Depression. I recommend people do it because if you have the time and the inclination and you can afford to stream things, there's some good things. I also just finished watching Mr. Robot, which I had never seen before. And one of the underlying big themes is almost like an Occupy movement against the 1%. And that was prominent in it. It's about banks. But I think it's good. But the other thing is get away from our computers. Go outside if you can. Get some fresh air and sunshine. Be with people you love. Know that the world is real. And this illusion of like government and media and all, it's just a bunch of people getting rich and trying to convince us that it matters. I don't know. That's my recommendation. Listen to some music. Listen to some Bob Marley. I listened to that this morning. It put me a live Bob Marley thing. It put me in a good mood.
In my house, music is always playing in the kitchen. It's get up and it's music playing all day long in our kitchen. So it's a big part of our lives here in my household. But I do want to thank you again, Professor